From Brooklyn to Beyond, Episode 1. Mollymoo, a whirlwind of a man with skin the color of ebony and a grin that could charm a hyena, had walked paths both dusty and cobbled. He left his village of Baobab Bend, nestled amongst the whispering giants of the savannah, years ago. Back then, he was just Mollymoo, a shepherd with a knack for calming anxious goats and a heart brimming with an insatiable curiosity. His journey began with a whisper, a tale of a hidden grove guarded by a grumpy djinn who held the key to ending the long drought plaguing his village. Mollymoo, armed with nothing but his wit and a spear his father had carved for him, set off. He found the grumpy djinn, not with violence, but with laughter and a shared love for riddles. The rains returned to Baobab Bend, and Mollymoo's legend bloomed. News of his feat travelled on the wind, reaching the ears of a beleaguered king in a distant city choked by a monstrous sandstorm. Mollymoo ventured forth, befriending a tribe of wind dancers who taught him the ancient language of the zephyrs. With their help, he calmed the sandstorm, revealing a hidden oasis beneath the city. The king, forever grateful, showered Mollymoo with riches, but the young man took only a magical gourd that whispered forgotten stories on the wind. His travels took him across vast oceans. He outsmarted a cunning imp stealing fish from a starving coastal village, using a trick learned from a mischievous spider he'd encountered in the Great Rift Valley. He helped a tribe in the snow-capped mountains appease the grumpy mountain spirit by playing a lullaby his grandmother used to sing him, its melody strangely similar to the spirit's mournful howl. Everywhere Mollymoo went, he left a trail of smiles and solved problems with a blend of courage, kindness, and a touch of mischief. He never forgot Baobab Bend, returning every year laden with stories and exotic treats for the children. They, in turn, would gather around him, wide-eyed, as he regaled them with tales of his adventures. One sunny afternoon, while sharing a pot of stew with the village elders, the wind in the gourd whispered a new story. It spoke of a creeping darkness threatening the heart of the land, a place called the Cradle of the Sun. Mollymoo's heart pounded with the familiar rhythm of adventure. He knew this was his most important quest yet. With a farewell feast and a promise to return, Mollymoo, the village hero turned world wanderer, set off towards the unknown, a grin splitting his face, ready to face the darkness with the same boundless optimism that had carried him so far. Episode 2, Whispers of the Sun. Mollymoo's journey towards the Cradle of the Sun took him through the whispering dunes of the endless desert. The wind, once his ally, now howled a mournful tune, carrying whispers of a forgotten danger. The gourd, usually a source of fantastical stories, remained ominously silent. Days bled into weeks, his supplies dwindling as quickly as his optimism. The relentless sun beat down, turning the once vibrant sand a weary yellow. Mollymoo spotted a lone baobab tree in the distance, a beacon of hope in the endless sea of sand. He stumbled towards it, picturing a cool respite beneath its shade, only to find it withered and hollow, offering no refuge. Despair threatened to engulf him. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught his eye. A tiny, wrinkled sand creature, no bigger than his thumb, scurried out from the base of the dead baobab. Its eyes, large and intelligent, held a glimmer of mischief. The creature spoke, its voice a dry rasp like leaves blowing in the wind. "Lost, are we?" it chirped. Mollymoo, surprised, managed a weak nod. "I seek the Cradle of the Sun," he rasped, his throat parched. The sand creature chuckled, a sound like rustling parchment. "Oh, the cradle, a dangerous place now, traveller. But I might know a way, for a price, of course." Mollymoo sighed, weary of riddles and bargains. "What do you want?" The creature's eyes gleamed. "A story, traveller, a story filled with laughter, a story to wake the sleeping dunes." Mollymoo felt a spark of amusement flicker within him. He remembered a tale from his youth, one his grandmother used to tell to chase away the desert chills. It spoke of a grumpy cloud who stole laughter from a group of mischievous jackals. The story was silly, filled with sound effects and exaggerated movements. With renewed energy, Mollymoo launched into his performance. He mimicked the grumpy cloud's pompous pronouncements and the jackal's mischievous antics. The desert echoed with his laughter, a sound the dunes hadn't heard in ages. As he finished, the sand creature cackled, a high-pitched sound that vibrated through the sand. "Well done, traveller," it rasped. "The path whispers secrets now. Follow the dancing shadows at dusk, and they will lead you closer to your goal. With renewed hope, Mollymoo thanked the creature and pressed on. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows, he spotted them, faint, shimmering forms dancing amongst the dunes. With a deep breath and a grin, he followed their silent call, venturing deeper into the heart of the mystery, ever closer to the cradle of the sun. Episode 3, Cradle of Shadows. Guided by the dancing shadows, Mollymoo navigated a treacherous maze of dunes. The air grew heavy, the silence broken only by the rasping of wind against sand. The playful shadows from earlier had morphed into menacing figures, their edges ragged and their movements erratic. He finally reached the peak of a massive dune, and there, nestled within a crater of volcanic rock, lay the cradle of the sun. It wasn't the vibrant, life-giving place he'd envisioned. The one-slush valley was choked with thorny vines, skeletal trees clawed at the sky, and an unnatural darkness hung heavy in the air. A low growl echoed from within the crater. Mollymoo peered into the gloom and saw a monstrous creature unlike anything he'd encountered, a hulking mass of obsidian with glowing red eyes that pulsed like malevolent embers. This, he realized with a jolt, was the creeping darkness he'd been warned about. The creature shifted, its voice a cacophony of grinding rocks and screeching metal. "You dare trespass in the cradle of shadows?" It boomed, "Foolish mortal, this place belongs to me." Mollymoo, though intimidated, held his ground. "I come not to conquer, but to understand," he declared, his voice surprisingly steady. "Why do you shroud this place in darkness?" The creature scoffed, the sound like a sandstorm tearing through a canyon. "Understanding, there is no understanding for mortals. This land was once vibrant, but greed and arrogance poisoned it. Now it serves only me." Mollymoo recognized the creature's words as a twisted echo of stories he'd heard, tales of forgotten kings who mined the cradle's heart for a mystical jewel that promised immortality but brought only destruction. A plan began to form in his mind, remembering the playful sand creature's love for stories. Mollymoo launched into a new tale, one about a greedy king who sought power but ended up imprisoned by his own darkness. He spoke with humor and pathos, weaving a narrative that resonated with the creature's own twisted desires. As he spoke, a flicker of doubt appeared in the creature's glowing eyes. The shadows around them began to waver, the darkness seeming to recede ever so slightly. Mollymoo pressed on, his voice ringing out in the desolate valley. Would his story be enough to break the creature's hold? Would the cradle of the sun be freed from its shroud of shadows? The answer hung heavy in the air, as uncertain as the dancing shadows that had led him here. Episode 4, Dawn Breaks. With each word Mollymoo spoke, the shadows around him writhed. The creature, the embodiment of the cradle's darkness, seemed to shrink as the story unfolded. The king's greed, his descent into madness, and the ultimate price he paid for his ambition resonated within the monstrous form. A tremor shook the ground as the creature roared, a sound filled with anguish and a hint of something else, recognition. Mollymoo pushed on, his voice rising above the din, weaving a hopeful ending where the king, faced with his own folly, chose redemption. As the final words left his lips, a gasp echoed through the crater. The monstrous form began to dissipate, dissolving into wisps of darkness that swirled and danced in the air. Light, hesitant at first, began to peek through the cracks in the suffocating darkness. The skeletal trees, once bare and menacing, sprouted a faint green fuzz on their branches. Mollymoo watched in awe as the cradle of the sun, finally freed from its shadowy prison, began to awaken. Vines retracted their thorny embrace, revealing vibrant flowers beneath. The air, once heavy with despair, became crisp and clean. A soft chirp broke the silence. A lone hummingbird, its feathers shimmering like emeralds in the newborn light, hovered before Mollymoo. It chirped again, then darted towards a patch of flowering vines, a tiny ambassador for life returning. Suddenly, a booming voice echoed across the valley. Not the harsh screech of the monster, but a deep, resonating tone that seems to emanate from the awakened earth itself. "Thank you, storyteller," the voice rumbled. "Your words have brought light back to the cradle. You have spoken for both the land and the darkness within it, and in doing so, have restored balance." Mollymoo looked around, searching for the source of the voice, but saw nothing. He smiled, a grin as wide as the newly awakened dawn. "It was just a story," he whispered, a single tear tracing a path down his cheek. "It wasn't just any story, though. It was a reminder of the power of words, of empathy, and perhaps most importantly, of the never-ending cycle of light and dark that existed within all things." As the sun climbed higher in the sky, bathing the cradle in golden light, Mollymoo knew his work here was done. He placed the magical gourd on a smooth rock, hoping its silence meant the land no longer needed its whispered tales. With a final glance at the now flourishing valley, Mollymoo turned and began the descent from the crater. His journey wasn't over. New whispers on the wind, stories waiting to be told, beckoned him onward. He was Mollymoo, the storyteller, and the world, with all its darkness and light, was his waiting canvas.